right, we're off to a good start. I'm Tim Daniel, and I'm here to tell you today why Evan Mobley is finally going to dominate in this year's playoffs.
I'm Chasity Melvin. I'll just say Cleveland rocks. Let's get into it.
I'm Danny Cunningham, and no matter what happens in the final two regular season games for the Cavs, this is a group that's ready for the postseason.
This is Locked On's Cavs Squad Show, the twice-a-week show where Cavs talk gets real. No filters, no fluff. Just raw takes, sharp opinions, and straight-up passion for the game. The way only Locked On Podcast Network knows how. Let's drop some dimes and squad up. The Cavs Squad Show starts now.
Good evening, Cavs fans. How are we doing? And welcome to the Squad Show, brought to you by Locked On Cavs and the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. I am Tim Daniel. I am host of the Cavs Postcast. He is Danny Cunningham, host of Locked On Cavs. You can also check out his writing at The Inside Shot. And also joining us, as always, former Cleveland Rocker, former WNBA All-Star Chasity Melvin. We're here to talk all things Cleveland Cavaliers as we get ready for the final two games of the regular season, and most importantly, the playoffs. On today's show, we're going to get into what we learned from the Cavs-Hawks matchup on Tuesday night. Danny was in the arena, so we're going to get his thoughts on it. Is this the year Evan Mobley really takes over finally? I feel like after watching that Atlanta game, I have some thoughts on that. Kenny Atkinson used some unique defensive schemes in that game, so I want to kind of get their Danny and Chastity's thoughts on what we could see from there. And then also, how many Cavs have a shot at all NBA and all defense this year? We're going to talk all those things today on the Squad Show. So, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Danny, you were in the arena last night for Cavs-Hawks, and I texted you shortly after, and I said that game felt awesome. It felt like an atmosphere that was a postseason atmosphere. Rocket Arena was awesome. You could feel it on the television, even here in Cincinnati. So you being in attendance last night, what was your biggest takeaway from that game?
Yeah, I think what we saw in the third quarter from the Cavs, where they outscored Atlanta 44-20, and they turned things up on both ends of the floor. They forced the Hawks into 8 turnovers. Offensively, they couldn't be stopped. And just like it, I think served as a reminder, because even though the Cavs have won a lot of basketball games lately, right? Like if you look at the record, they've been really, really good since the trade deadline. And just like, it hasn't always felt like they've been a championship caliber team. But I think that game on Wednesday night was a reminder of what this team can look like when they're at their best. Now, they haven't been at their best all that frequently, and they haven't needed to be to win a lot of these basketball games. And they will need to be when the playoffs get here next weekend. But I think that the biggest thing walking out of the building late Wednesday night was like, you know what, this team, when they're healthy, because that was a big part of it too. They had Dean Wade back. They had Donovan Mitchell back. They were as healthy as they have been. Jalen Tyson was the only guy that was out from the rotation. But when they're healthy and when they're playing at their best, they're capable of beating everybody in the NBA.
1,000% agree. Chastity, the thing that really jumped out to me the most about this game, and I talked about this on the postcast, Danny kind of got a little bit into this as well in his show. James Harden did not shoot very well in that game, and they still managed to take care of business. Donovan Mitchell was obviously awesome. Evan Mobley was awesome. They got a really nice game from Jared Allen was so coming back from the injury there, but you kind of just saw really like leaning on Mitchell and Mobley in this game. They were really kind of able to take care of business against the Hawks.
Well, Mitchell and Mobley are the heartbeat of this team. They've been there. They've done that they came in and they lead the way for not only the bench players, but I think Kenny Atkinson really trusts them as the leaders of the team. So James Harden is, even though he's an all-star, all NBA, we'll talk about it later, but he's new to the Cavs. So he is finally kind of getting his rhythm, and that maybe, you know, he's going to have his off nights, as we always know, with great offensive threats like himself. But the team leaders are Mobley and Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. Here is my takeaway from that game. There is no way in hell the Hawks can beat the Cavs 4 times.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely no way.
And I think one of the things that should be encouraging if you're a Cavs fan from this is, you know, every series is going to look different because playoff basketball is so much about styles, right? Like we've all heard the phrase styles make fights, and the Cavs stylistically, I think, are pretty unique in the fact that they can cause a lot of problems for a lot of different styles of teams.
Yes.
And Atlanta has a lot of athleticism. They've got a lot of length on the wing, right? Like Dyson Daniels is a really good defender. Jalen Johnson's this awesome player who had a horrific night on Wednesday. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it feels like his arms go on forever. Like he's super long, but they don't have size in the front court, especially right now with Jock Landale out with an ankle injury. And the Cavs took advantage of that. And that was one of the things that I was unsure would happen. Like, would we see because this matters a lot. But would we see if the Cavs face the Hawks, and I think this is applicable to the Raptors too, who they could play in the first round. It's would we see the Cavs have Evan Mobley and to a different extent, Jared Allen be the guys that really put their impact on the game or their fingerprint on the game. And that's exactly what I thought Evan did in that game on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that jumped out to me the most, Chasity, is that, Jane brings up Evan Mobley. We're going to have a full segment on him here in a bit, but 19 rebounds and 3 blocks. Now you were a center in your time playing professional basketball, and that's not super common to see from a center, but like, what is your takeaway from that when you see a center do those things? Does that just give you like a big seeming sense of pride when you see the bigs do that?
It gives me a huge sense of pride, especially in today's NBA when we're trying to weed out the big guys. And listen, his motor is off the chain. I mean, we love it when a big guy has a motor, and you see that with some big guys. If they aren't getting touches, they aren't impacting the game at all. But that is not the case with Evan Mobley. It starts on the defense end, and like you said, his tenacity on the rebounding end of the game, that is going to bode well for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I just like Evan Mobley because he's a mismatch. He's not really a center, not a stretch four, but he has a knack for the basketball and these great hands. So you got to love what you saw last night.
Danny, do you take anything away from the fourth quarter last night?
Not entirely, because I do think, and one of the things that I was thinking as I was sitting there watching is if this were a playoff situation, I think the Cavs would have handled things a little bit differently.
Me too.
So the starting 5 that the Cavs put out there was obviously James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Dean Wade was the 5th starter, which we've talked about a lot, right? So that group played 8 minutes and 24 seconds together on Wednesday night against the Hawks. They outscored Atlanta by 17 points in those 8 minutes and 24 seconds. That group did not play after, I think, the 7-minute mark in the third quarter. So I do think that if that were a postseason game and you see Atlanta rip off an 18-2 run to get what was an 18-point Cavs lead all the way down to 2, I think you probably see them go back to their starting lineup much sooner than they maybe would have last night. Now, Wade, I think on a bit of a minutes restriction, only played 21 minutes and I think 30 seconds because he's fighting back that ankle injury. But I look at that and say, in a postseason situation, I think the Cavs probably handle the fourth quarter differently. So I don't think that there's that much that needs to be read into.
I completely agree, and I'm glad you said that, because if, like you said, the Dean Wade situation, just kind of him playing on the minute restriction. I'm glad you brought up the point of that starting 5 together playing those short minutes, because I listened to Justin and Carter today on the Chase Down, and they were having the same conversation. And what they said was that when that group was on the floor together, their offensive rating was over 150, and their defensive rating was 67. That's not normal for a basketball team to see a defensive rating that good.
It's been awesome, man. And even going back, because that's the 4th game, I believe. And I want to pull it up so I get these numbers correctly because I wrote about this, but that was the 4th game that group has started together. The games have been Brooklyn, which they won by 1,000 points, partially because the Nets are terrible. The New York Knicks, who they beat in Cleveland by 15 points in a game that they really controlled throughout the entire night back in February. Oklahoma City, and it went terribly, where they were outscored, I think it was 23-5 with that group on the floor. And then last night. So if you look at the totality, like that group as a whole has played 33 minutes together so far this year after Wednesday night's game. They have outscored their opponents, Brooklyn, OKC, New York, and Atlanta, by 30 points. And that includes getting outscored by 14 points in 5 minutes against the Thunder. So if you take out the one bad game they had, and I get it, like this is all super small sample size.
Yes.
If you take out those 5 minutes, they've outscored their opponents 88-44 in 28 minutes.
That's insanity. Now, Chassie, we'll touch on this before we go to our first break here. The Cavs did not need their bench very much last night. So if you look kind of down the line, Max Strus led the bench scoring with 8. Sam Merrill had 6. Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder each had 5. Dennis Schroeder obviously really did not have a very good game. Was a -22. I know plus minus is a different person. Whoever you talk to, everyone has a different opinion on it. But I kind of almost feel like that's kind of an advantage in a sense. Like Danny said, they didn't handle like a true postseason experience. And if you look at that fourth quarter, it was a lot more of those bench guys that were in when Atlanta was making their run. But also, it kind of just lets you know like how good that group is that Danny was just talking about, that their bench wasn't something they had to go and like a fire and just run them out there immediately.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis Schroeder obviously played it with the Atlanta Hawks, and he's one of those guys. Like I said, he's a spark off the bench. So, like, really, was this game very meaningful for either team? You never know. But at the end of the day, Schroeder's going to be ready once the postseason starts. So, I mean, you just chalk that one up.
Yeah, is this the play 10, trust 9 scenario when Jalen Tyson comes back?
I think it depends on the matchup. I do.
Yeah, I do too.
I think that who the Cavs have as their 9th guy, or if they want to play 10 guys, I think it depends. Like, do they see Toronto? I think Dennis Schroeder could make more sense in that series than maybe he does against Atlanta. I think if Jalen Tyson's out there last night and available, and Kenny did say prior to the game that part of the reason Jalen was downgraded to doubtful and ultimately didn't play was the conditioning aspect of things, because when you miss so much time with that toe injury, it's not just that you can't play basketball, it's that you really can't stay in shape all that well. So I would expect him to play on Friday. And I know that he's listed as questionable as we record this at 9:30 on Thursday night. But I do look at it and say, if Jalen Tyson were available, I'm not sure that Dennis Schroeder plays, or I'm not sure how much he plays. So I do think it's an interesting thing to think about what a potential playoff rotation could look like against the Atlanta Hawks, considering we just got a glimpse into how that matchup overall looks on Wednesday night.
Yeah, not just with Tyson's stamina, but obviously his timing. It's a little, he's lacking the timing and everything. It's a step behind, but obviously that's going to be a key addition and something that they will have to adjust with the scout.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to go and take our first break here, but when we come back, we saw a glimpse of it last night. We've already touched a little bit on Evan Mobley, but it feels like that quote unquote next step that we always hear about may just be coming in this playoffs. We'll talk about that more right after this. Way Day is here, and if you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the time to do it. We're talking about some of the best deals of the year on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, everything you need to refresh your home. During Way Day, Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. It's super easy to filter by style, size, and price, so you're not just wasting time scrolling. Way Day is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th to the 27th to shop Wayday. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Let's give some love, as always, to our everydayers here on the Squad Show and Locked On Cavs as well, where you can also become part of the Everydayer Club. If you click the link in the description today, you have you can pay $5 a month or $50 a year. You get ad-free episodes of mine and Chastity's show on the postcast. You get Danny on Locked On Cavs, or you can pay $50, or you get the Discord chat that we're in quite a bit, just talking all things Cavs with our everydayers as well. Go to lockedoncavs.supercast.com to learn more, and we will be happy to have you as part of the Everydayer Club. Evan Mobley is the conversation here, people, because last night we saw Danny. Did Evan Mobley want to smoke last night? I feel like he wanted to smoke last night.
I think that it's a good matchup for him, man. I really do. And I think it was a really encouraging thing that he went out there and played the way that he did, had 19 rebounds. And I didn't think Jared Allen looked great physically. Like, I think he very clearly is fighting through whatever knee ailment they want to call that, severe tendonitis, or if there's another technical name that they want to throw out at some point. I think it's clear he's fighting through that. So the Cavs do need Evan to go out there and be the best big on both ends of the floor. And he was that in that game. And I thought one of the things too that I think is important with him is not just the way that he played, not just the way that he rebounded, but after the game, he told us in the locker room that they wanted to send a message. And I thought it was important that Evan, who is this guy that's been quiet and reserved and doesn't say a lot, and his interactions with the media are often not super long-winded the way that some other players are. But I thought it said a lot that he was the one saying that they wanted to send a message to the Atlanta Hawks, who they could see in the playoffs. So it's not just the way that he played, but what he had to say afterwards, I think, should have everybody very encouraged with what we could see from Evan when the playoffs get here in 8 days or however long it's going to be.
Chastity, obviously, you as a former big, like we'd like to bring in here, seeing a guy like that who just has such a dynamic way of just affecting games on both sides of the ball. What is it really kind of the thing where, like, if you're playing against Evan Mobley and you see games like that and you're the Atlanta Hawks and you're like, I'm probably going to have to play these guys at minimum 4 times, are you just kind of like, crap, what do I do? Like, what's the game plan in that circumstance?
Yeah, what is the game plan? I mean, who is going to guard Evan Mobley? And it's not just Atlanta, but it's like what big? And there's really no one that can guard Evan Mobley because they don't have an answer for him. He's not a big where you can use physicality because he posts up on the block and he has all these fancy post moves. I mean, if you can't outmuscle him because he's so long, athletic, and agile that you can't feel him. He sneaks behind the defenses. Second, like his ability to rim run in transition. I mean, he runs like a deer on the court. No one's going to keep up with him. And then you got dime droppers from any of the guards. Keon Ellis off the bench, Dennis Schroeder, Mastruz, Donovan Mitchell. All of them can feed him the basketball in transition. And then the defensive schemes against the all-NBA backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. Do you change those schemes? Because if you don't, he's going to get the drop-offs at the rim for easy dunks. And obviously he's going to get, in his defense, we can all talk about that, block shots and getting steals. So, no, there's really no answer for Evan Mobley. And I like what Danny said. Silent leaders as a pro, when they come out and speak, wow, that's impactful for everyone. And it shows the desire to win.
Yeah, I think the thing I took away too was Danny kind of mentioned how bad Jalen Johnson played last night. Evan Mobley had that matchup for most of the game. Like Evan Mobley, so Jalen Johnson last night shot 4 of 16, was 0 of 5 from 3, did have a double-double, which looks good until you look at the shooting numbers. But Mobley, that was his kind of main assignment last night. And he took Jalen Johnson out of the game, who is, especially now, Atlanta's best player. And he made sure he had no effect in this matchup.
Yeah, and I thought what the Cavs did defensively was really interesting because Atlanta starts primarily wings, right? Like they've got Dyson Daniels, who we will get to in a second, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jalen Johnson, CJ McCollum is the smallest guy in their starting five. Onyeka Okongwu is their big, who's like 6'9", like he's decent size, but he's not as big as Evan or Jarrett. And the Cavs allowed, which is something that they've not always done, but they allowed Evan to be the stopper, right? And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a really good player too, and that's who Dean Wade was matched up on. But they let Evan go defend the other team's best player. And that's been a rarity for Evan in his time in Cleveland, because what I expected them to do going into this game was I thought that they would have Evan Mobley defend Dyson Daniels, the worst offensive player, because Dyson Daniels shoots 18% from 3-point range. So that means Evan doesn't have to guard him when he doesn't have the ball, basically. That Evan can play that free safety, that roamer type role, and really create chaos elsewhere on the floor. And instead, they put him on Jalen Johnson. And I think that was really interesting to see. I don't know if that's what they would do in the playoffs. I think you can't argue with the results that we saw. But I thought that was a very interesting defensive strategy just because we haven't seen it a ton.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing you look at, Chasity, when you look at this is, and Danny, forgive me, I probably sound like your Twitter mentions here that you probably get all the time, but there's a lot of Evan Mobley conversation of when's he going to consistently shoot threes. And this year, obviously, the shot hasn't been there. Only took 3 threes last night. Granted, they didn't need him to take them, but I don't think they really need him to take him a whole lot anymore. Now they're kind of getting back to being full health. And I think that's the perfect thing for the Cavs offense right now.
It's definitely the perfect thing. Evan Mobley is filling a role, and it's a key role for the Cavs in the postseason. And I know a lot of the fans get caught up in the 3-point shooting, but the real basketball fans that know the game understand the importance of Evan Mobley being a shot blocker, altering guards. When he is in the switch, when he switches with the guards, he's able to guard shots and make players adjust their shot. And you saw that in last night's game. His length is just out of this world. So, no, we don't need Evan Mobley to shoot threes. But if they have a lead, let the big guy get some attempts up from the top of the key. I'm cool with that. But you like when a big relishes in their role, and he's going to be a key piece in the postseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that last night was a huge game that gave us a lot of excitement for sure. And I know 6 of 10 from the free throw line. I know it's going to come up. It is what it is. I'm not
6 of 10 is an improvement from what he's been, man.
It really is.
It has been a big struggle. 6 of 10 is a bit of an improvement from what he's been.
Yeah, especially because there's a team that shot 80% from the line last night. And there's been, since the All-Star break, they've not shot very well from the free throw line.
What did you guys think of the free throw disparity? Because there were a lot of people, in my mentions particularly, that were very upset because there have been a flood of Atlanta fans in my mentions. Very upset that the Cavs shot 20 more free throws than the Hawks did. What do you guys think of that?
I took it as the Cavs did everything they could to get in the paint. They didn't just settle. They weren't just taking consistent 3-point shots all night. Like they did take 33 threes as a team, but I took it as they were forcing themselves to the rim. I mean, if you look at Donovan and James, and of course, like James has had that incredible 4-point play later in the game that really kind of sets the game apart. But for me, it was just that I felt like they were really aggressive in making sure like they attacked the rim and said like they make the ref make a call.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a constant debate. Whichever team doesn't get free throws, there's always an outpour and outcry and the fake outrage. But obviously, the team that has the most energy and that's attacking the paint, they're going to get the calls.
Yeah. That's exactly what I thought as well. I mean, did you have anything you thought about it anymore, Dan? You're just kind of...
I mean, I just, it kind of gets back to the way that the Hawks line up to where they're smaller.
Yeah.
And because I think it would have been one thing if James Harden and Donovan Mitchell would have got like 12 attempts each, right? Harden took 5. 3 of them came on a 3-point foul that happened in the fourth quarter. That was what Jalen Johnson fouled out on. Donovan Mitchell took 6. It was Evan Mobley took 10. Jared Allen took 11. Like, to me, that is just the Cavs taking advantage of the size advantage that they had, which, again, getting back to what I said earlier, I just think is a super encouraging thing coming from that game.
I'm glad you said something about that Jalen Johnson play, because I forgot to mention how huge that challenge was when Kenny got Dyson Daniels to pick up his 6th foul, and just how much that really paid such an effect in the game. And obviously Kenny's been really good at challenges since he became the Cavs coach. But that just kind of felt like it was like another one of those things. And I love Quinn Snyder as a coach. Obviously Donovan Mitchell has a great history with Quinn Snyder from their time in Utah together, but it was nice to see Kenny kind of almost out X and O him to an extent and then take advantage there.
Yeah, I would agree. And I also do think too, I mean, to be fair, like the Cavs have better players than the Hawks.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the one thing that I don't know that
is.
we've necessarily said. Like they're just a better team. Like they have more talent. Like if you're drafting these two teams, like if we are playing pickup basketball and you put everyone from the Hawks and everyone from the Cavs up against the wall and you're picking teams, 4 of the 6 first picks are guys on the Cavs. And just like, I think that matters. And maybe we don't talk about enough actually.
I totally agree. Yeah.
I agree as well.
Agree. Yeah. Well, folks, we've talked a lot of offense. We've talked a lot of fun things here. Let's talk about some defense, because last night, Kenny Atkinson threw some real unique trends out there that we would have to touch on and see. Is this something we can look forward to in the playoffs as well? There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Pulled up the Game Time app, picked an upcoming NBA game, and had tickets locked within minutes. Love seeing all the in-price upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. Being able to see the view from the seat before buying made the decision easy. Zone deals are also awesome. You choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. So now we turn to defense for this conversation here. And last night we saw Kenny Atkinson throw some real unique situations out there that honestly, I kind of loved. And what I mean by that, if you go back and watch the game, you saw a lot of CJ McCollum on Jared Allen. Jared played a little bit more drop coverage in this game than normal, but I still thought that was a really solid matchup for the team. You saw James Harden guarding Onyeka Okongwu for big stretches in this game, and I kind of loved it. And I'll get to that here in a second. And then obviously we saw the, Danny mentioned it. Dean Wade was matched up on Dyson Daniels. Evan Mobley had the Jalen Johnson assignment. And Donovan Mitchell really kind of held his own there as well with the Nickeil Alexander-Walker matchup. I know he had a really good game, but I felt like those two did a really good job going back and forth for their respective teams. But Danny, I know that this is kind of abnormal, but kind of not, because we've seen Kenny kind of use James Harden this way. In their last episode on Tuesday, we talked a little bit about just like hiding him. And especially in a playoff matchup and half-court offense, people are going to really try to attack your worst defender. But we have also seen in this case, if you go back to that New Orleans game in New Orleans, James Harden's guarding Zion for a lot of that game. James Harden's picked up a lot of guys like this where it's like he's been, may not have the height, but he has kind of the stature against those guys. So what did you take away from that? Because honestly, I think I loved it.
I thought it was a smart defensive strategy, and I think it's a reminder of how this team is different after the Darius Garland James Harden trade, because they would have to at times try and hide Darius Garland in certain places defensively. And if the Cavs still had their old roster in this matchup against the Hawks. I would bet that Darius Garland would be defending Dyson Daniels, and Dean Wade would probably be on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Donovan Mitchell would be on CJ McCollum, and Jared Allen would be on Onyeka Okongwu, and maybe Evan Mobley still on Jalen Johnson. But because they have James Harden, who is a legit 6'5" and certainly has a lot of strength, he is one of the stronger guards in basketball, they can put him on Onyeka Okongwu, who is a guy that does want to stretch the floor out. He's taken over 5 threes a game. He's not necessarily like this old school low post threat as a big. So the Cavs can get away with that. Now, they got caught a couple times where Donovan Mitchell got switched on to him, and it ended up in Okongwu either getting easy buckets or getting to the free throw line. But I thought it was a really smart defensive strategy. And I'm curious how it could maybe be tinkered going into the postseason. Like I thought, having Jared Allen defend Dyson Daniels made sense. I wonder if maybe we see Evan Mobley back in that role. I thought that having Dean Wade on Nickeil Alexander-Walker made sense. I didn't know if we would see him there or on Jalen Johnson. So I think there are a lot of different directions the Cavs could go. But overall, I thought the fact that they really just telegraphed how little they respect Dyson Daniels as a shooter. And again, he's shooting 18% from 3-point range this year. And he made one last night against the Cavs. He went, I think it was 1 of 3. Yeah, 1 of 3 when against the Cavs 3-point range. Like, okay, do it again. Like, they're just going to allow him 10 to 15 feet of space every time he has the ball on the perimeter because he's not going to make them consistently. So I think that is a little quirk they could use to their advantage.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I need to apologize. My ring light just died on me. So that's, wonderful thing about live podcasting is when the technology goes against you. All right, Chasity. So I mentioned it and Danny talked to it a little bit as well. Drop coverage. Obviously last year, where Cavs got beat really bad against the Pacers was the ability for the Pacers to find a way to switch Jared Allen to Tyrese Halliburton in that series. And that was kind of one of the biggest things that kind of costed them to really struggle in that series. Do you feel like this was just an adjustment to that? Or do you think this just was coincidental because they were playing the Hawks and they didn't trust any of their guys to hit threes?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's just Coach Atkinson doing group experimenting on defense, challenging guys, seeing what, playing around with different defensive schemes. And also, but the biggest thing that they just didn't trust Atlanta to make threes. Really.
Can you kind of go a little bit into just from, you're the only one of the three of us who's been a pro basketball player, but just the benefit of what drop coverage brings to a defense and how it helps a team, especially like Cleveland, where does it just kind of like take more pressure off the big in your eyes? What do you see as like the biggest benefit when teams use that?
Well, I mean, if you're talking from the analytics aspect of it, I mean, you're forcing them into mid-range. Your ability, obviously, for the bigs just to protect the paint and protect the rim. So drop coverage does help with that. But I love the length of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and the ability just to be able to switch it up. Like, they don't solely have to rely on drop coverage. They can mix it up, unlike some other bigs in the league.
Yeah. Danny, when they bring Keon Ellis in with his to go with Evan and Jarrett, are the Cavs basically just playing Red Rover on defense at that point?
I mean, the ability that Keon has, I think off the ball more than on the ball, has really stood out to me. Like, he has been, I kind of dare to say, a little underwhelming as a point of attack defender. But the way that he can get his hands on the basketball, the way that he can get his hands in passing lanes and really do a great job of creating chaos, which, I talk about with Evan Mobley as a big too. I think Keon does from a wing perspective. That to me has been really, really impressive. And that's why, I do think that the future with him in Cleveland is a really bright thing. But what they can do with some of their lineups, and I think they still need to find balance, and we're still trying to figure out what works because, again, they have had 0 games with their entire rotation available so far this year, but they have the ability to either lean all the way into offense in some lineups, all the way into defense in some other lineups. So what they look like in the playoffs, I think, is going to be a really interesting thing.
I used this comp one time, and some people liked it and some people didn't, but you've been around the team, you've been around the Cavs for a long time, so I'm curious your thoughts. I compared him to kind of being like a longer, not as explosive version of Iman Shumpert. What would you kind of say of Keon Ellis?
Yeah, I'm not sure that he's longer. I think that they have similar hands. So I see where you're coming from there because Shump was, 6'4", 6'5". And I also think that Shump was stronger than Keon is. And I think that is the one area where if you want to buy stock in Keon Ellis to improve as a basketball player, and I think that we could probably agree that offensively he's been better than I anticipated.
Yes,
That he
completely.
would be. But I think that he needs to get a little bit stronger moving forward to really become take his defensive abilities to the next level, because he's 6'4" and 170 pounds, maybe 180 pounds. And you can run into problems there. So I look at it. I think that the comp you're making makes sense when you see the hands, because when I see some of the ways that he's able to swipe down on the basketball, some of the ways that he's able to get his hand on the basketball without fouling, Shump is the guy that he reminds me of. I've not seen very many other guys that have worn a Cavs uniforms that have that very distinct ability. So I think that's a good comp, but I do think Keon needs to get stronger. I think Shump was maybe a little bit more of a flexible defender, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
He reminds me a lot. He puts me in the mind, and we're going back with the Nuggets, Corey Brewer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's who he puts me in the mind of.
That's a good comp too.
Yeah, those darn Florida national championship teams, man. I grew up in Northern Kentucky, so everyone here around here is diehard UK fans and hates Florida. I am not one of them, but I love those Florida teams. Chasity, I'll bring you in here because obviously one of the big parts that the Cavs are going to be relying on Max Strus, and Max is normally been a solid defender for this team. We're still kind of getting his legs underneath him there. What do you kind of suspect they could kind of go with to kind of make sure he's involved in the game? Because obviously he's going to have to play both sides of the ball, especially in the playoffs. But do you kind of see a way that they can kind of protect him a little more as he's kind of getting back get his legs underneath him?
I think he's just going to have to take his punches, and rely on his bigs to help him when he gets beat. But he has the energy and he has the high enough IQ to really battle on the defensive end. But what's really going to help Strus is if he knocks down shots. He is a guy that his offense ignites his defense. So if he's knocking down his shots and makes an impact on the offensive end, it's going to bode well for his ability on the defensive end.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. All right, folks, we got one last segment here today. We're going to talk about the possibility of the Cavs and what they're going to be recognized for, potentially all NBA and then some more. Let's talk about that and more right after this. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your posts. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Job. This episode of the Cavs Squad Show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now. And it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about. How easy does it put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it? The stress that comes with trying to figure everything out on your own, the expectations you feel to have everything together, and how that pressure can spill into the other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Well, before we get to our final segment today, and look, my ring light's back on. So technology is wonderful things. We do have a score now update that does affect the Cavaliers' postseason appearance. Now, the New York Knicks were victors as we recorded tonight over the Boston Celtics, 112-106. So now that means if the Knicks want to get that 2 seed, they do have to win out. But the Celtics do have a matchup tomorrow against the almighty New Orleans Pelicans. So
I still think the Celtics are going to get 2 here, but the way that this matters for the Cavs is the Knicks remain 1 game ahead of Cleveland. in the standings, and they hold the tiebreaker. So if the Knicks win on Friday night and they play the Toronto Raptors, then the Knicks will clinch no worse than third. That means the Cavs would be locked in at number 4. Also, if the Cavs, who are sitting Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen and Sam Merrill against the Hawks on Friday night in Atlanta, if they lose that game, they're also locked in at 4th. So just a couple of things that impact where the Cavs could be. There are also a couple of other things that kind of impact who the Cavs could play, because the Raptors did beat the Miami Heat tonight as well. So if the Raptors win their final 2 games, obviously they play New York on Friday and then they play Brooklyn on Sunday, then the Raptors will be the number 5 seed, which would likely set up a matchup with the Cavs.
Which the Cavs did not beat the Raptors this year, but I'm not holding anything against that because it was a completely different roster. And
Lonzo Ball played a lot of minutes in this game. That's
Yes,
all
he
I'm
did.
going to say.
Y'all leave my Lonzo alone.
We're not hating. You know, I'm on record that when they made the trade, I thought it was going to be a great trade. So I
I did too.
can't.
I thought it would work really well, and it did not.
No,
Well, it would only work. I feel like teams and GMs don't realize Lonzo has to have the ball in his hands to really impact a team.
yeah, I
He
agree.
has to dominate the basketball. And if he's not doing that,
Yeah.
I also thought
That's
it was
fair.
kind of funny that he said that he was scapegoated from the Cavs when it's like, my dude, you shot 23% from 3 on a lot of volume. Like, let's call it what it is.
yeah.
But hey, also want to touch on a couple more things before we get out of here, get to our next segment. We did officially get word about an hour before we went live. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording that the WNBA Board of Governors did approve Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Detroit to have WNBA teams, which y'all went, I thought that was already approved. So we do know that we're going to have Cleveland, and I know Chasty's been involved in the Cleveland WNBA coming back, and we're all fighting for the Rockers name. I think Greg Anthony has already told people it is the Rockers on NBA 2K if you play commentary with the Cavs. So,
Okay.
but I don't think it's been confirmed either. So they did do the funny April Fool's joke where they said they were going to be the Cleveland Wolverines. So that was, I got to get a kick out of that. Yes. All right. So now we kind of get to the final segment here on the Squad Show, and we're very grateful for everyone for hanging out with us and talking some Cavs ball with us. But we're now at the situation where we know that the Cavs probably aren't going to have recognition for individual awards. We don't think Evan Mobley's just played enough to potentially repeat as Defensive Player of the Year. Also, that Victor Wembanyama guy exists. We know that Donovan Mitchell probably is going to get some lower MVP votes, but he's not going to crack the top 5. We know that, they don't have a Rookie of the Year situation here because Tyrese Proctor obviously did not play as much of an effect, but there is the beauty in All-NBA. And with the 65 game rule, the Cavaliers may have the potential to have 2 guys. It's a bit of a long shot, so we're going to dive into that. And then also Evan Mobley tomorrow when he plays in that Atlanta game, which we don't know how many minutes he's necessarily going to play, will officially have hit his 65th game, so he'll be able to qualify for all NBA defense. So now, guys, I bring the conversation back to you both, because now we're looking at a situation where the Cavs potentially have 3 people make all NBA teams, being Donovan and potential James as all NBA players and Evan as an all NBA defense. Donovan, I think, is no doubt about it, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just a question of going to be first or second team, probably between him and Jaylen Brown. Evan, I think, will make all defense. I'm not quite sure where he's going to place there. But the James Harden thing, I've brought this up quite a bit because I don't necessarily think he's going to get it. But with the numbers he's put up and how many people have been dropped off for the injury rule, he's got an outside shot. So I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are on this situation. And Danny, I'll start with you there.
I think it's interesting, and I think it's tough to judge entirely his case. Like, he has a unique case because he's traded during the middle of the season, right? And the role that he had with the Clippers is much different than the role that he has with the Cavs. And I think that is a difficult thing to sort of weigh as you're talking about who belongs on an all NBA team, who doesn't. Like, I could see a world in which James Harden finishes 3rd team all NBA. I certainly think he's going to get votes. I'm not so sold that he's going to make 3rd team all NBA, but I certainly think that there are a lot of people that are going to give him a strong consideration, especially when you consider what Cleveland's record has been since he arrived and how good they have been and how good he has been. In some of his numbers, like the free throw stuff has gone down, but he's shooting, I think, 45% from beyond the arc since the Cavs traded for him or since he got to Cleveland. So I do think that there are some things certainly worth weighing. I think Evan Mobley will likely be second team all defense if I had to bet. Now we have to wait and see. He's not going to win defensive player of the year, and I don't think that he deserves to win defensive player of the year, but I do think that he deserves to be all defense. And I am very interested to see where Donovan Mitchell comes out for all NBA teams. He's going to make one. And I think the question is he the last guy on that first team, or is he the first or second guy on the second team?
Yeah, and the thing that's really interesting about this, for those who aren't following the league wide, is that Luka Doncic technically will not hit 65 games, but if you've been reading any NBA articles, you know that he also is going to use the benefit of the fact that he was out for his daughter being born, his child being born, as a way to kind of get that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a very important thing to say there. So I think if I had to guess, I would probably say Donovan's going to end up on second team, because I think Jaylen Brown obviously doesn't, playing for the Celtics doesn't hurt him there, but also just having that unbelievable season without Jason Tatum and where the Celtics are at when a lot of people thought they were a potential play-in team. I just feel like Jaylen Brown's going to get the slight edge there. Chasity, I'll bring you in here because with James Harden's situation, I think the reason that I'm really kind of considering this is because he was a guy that a lot of people thought was snubbed as an all-star. Like Danny said, he was traded right before the all-star break, but is a guy a lot of people thought should have made the Western Conference all-star team and now has a chance to make all-NBA for, kind of revitalizing the Cavaliers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, when we talk about James Harden, obviously he's not new to the league. And we're not just talking about being snubbed for All-Star. But when I look at all NBA teams, I look at players that have NBA responsibility. And what I mean by that is that their impact on their teams winning and being successful, which is, to your point, Jaylen Brown with the Boston Celtics after losing Jason Tatum. Now, listen, the Cavs don't have a chance at a chip or the postseason without James Harden, but more importantly, Donovan Mitchell. So I really think it's going to be a close call first, but he definitely should be at the number one for second team all NBA at the first spot. James Harden clearly deserves to be all NBA. I mean, he sustains offense. He gives you 20 plus on any given night, and then he can give you double digit in assists or rebounds when he elects to. So just off of his past, not that you just reward a player just because they've been a great NBA player, but he does hold that responsibility with any team that he's been on, and that impact in really making the team better and driving them and taking them as far as they can go. So I do believe he's all deserving of all NBA.
Yeah, because I think it's generally consensus is Shea, Jokic, Jaylen Brown, Luka, and then who am I missing?
If Luka's eligible, though, and I don't know, I wouldn't call Jaylen Brown a consensus first team guy. Because I do think that there's a lot of stuff out there in the debate about like how much advanced numbers and stuff should matter is probably one for a different podcast and not this one. But there are a lot of things that have said, and I'm not saying that I believe this, but there are a lot of numbers that point to the Celtics maybe being better when Jaylen Brown is on the bench. And I don't know if you can be a first team all NBA guy when there is a lot of data that supports that. So I'm not so sure that I would say that he's a lock to be first team. I certainly think that Shea is. I think Jokic is. I think obviously Wemby is. And then I think conversations start right there.
Yes.
So we'll have to wait and see. And I think this would be a much easier conversation if Cade Cunningham were eligible, if Luka Doncic were eligible. But I think that you kind of have three guys that are locks. And then after that, I think debates can begin.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to ask the dumb question that every host of NBA podcasts asks the dumb question. I assume you guys are also not fans of the 65 game rule, or do you enjoy it?
Chasity, you can go first here.
I am not a fan of any of the NBA rules. Really, I'm not. And it's just there were a lot of intellects in the NBA, and I just feel like they could have found a better way to ensure that players played and ensure that coaches and the front office had ample time as far as alerting people to players that were injured or why they were out of games and why they weren't playing. So I don't know that the 65 rule was just the smartest decision.
I think it's so stupid. I do
too.
Because like go through the history of these awards. How many guys because the media is the one that votes for this, right? And I understand that there are a lot of people that maybe don't like the media, that maybe think it should be decided a different way. And I am open to hearing what other ways there are to go about this, but teams can't do this, like, because teams are inherently biased, and players have shown that they can't do this either, because just go look at who they vote for all-star starters, right? Imani Bates last year, who was on a two-way with the Cavs, got multiple votes to be an all-star starter. So like, you can't trust them to vote for it either. So I do think that the media might be a bit of a best of the bad options, but who has won an award or been named to an all-NBA team that you look at and say they didn't deserve it because they didn't play enough? Like, I think that this was a rule that was created for a problem that didn't exist. Load. Could you convince me load management has been an issue at times? Sure. But what player that has missed half the season was ever named to an all NBA team? It doesn't exist. Like, we have watched this rule come into place, and I think that there are some cases that are different, right? Like, Cade Cunningham's going to finish at 62 games. Do I think any less of him because he played 62 instead of 65? No, that's ridiculous. Now, if he would have played 50 games, do I think he should be an all-NBA player? No, absolutely not. Like, Steph Curry is awesome, but you know what? He's played 43 games. He doesn't belong anywhere near an all-NBA team. And I just think that the media consistently with this has showcased a lot of common sense. And I think putting a restrictor on it has only made it worse and made these teams worse because of it.
I completely agree.
Couldn't agree more. It's also just going to be really weird. It's the first time really in my adulthood that LeBron James is not on an all-NBA team. I don't know if I'm really ready to accept that yet.
But like, even with that, and I'm not saying that he should be, but
right.
You look at the 65 game rule, LeBron obviously not close to it. LeBron has played more minutes than Wemby has.
Yeah.
Like that. But the number of games matters more than the minutes you play. And I'm not saying that Wemby should not be all NBA. He absolutely should. I'm not saying LeBron should be, because I don't think he should. But like, that just tells me this rule is flawed.
Yeah. I completely agree. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Danny, do you want to give any preview of what we can look forward to on Locked On Cavs tomorrow, or you want to kind of keep it a surprise? Or
I am going to be talking about how the Cavs could approach the game on Friday night against the Atlanta Hawks. We will be talking about the Boston Celtics losing, which maybe closes the door on the Cavs getting up to the number 3 seed and potential postseason opponents for your Cleveland Cavaliers.
Love it. Be sure to also check out Danny on the Inside Shot. I'm over at Cavs on SI covering the team as well. Chasity will be making her postcast debut with me tomorrow night as we recap the Cavs-Hawks game. Hopefully one big win before we have to go face the Wizards, and they might call that an NBA game. I don't know. We shall see. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us.
Coming back next season.
They're not coming back on Sunday. I promise you that.
The Mystics will be here this summer. Let's check them out.
There you go.
That's
Elena
a different
Donovan,
story.
Hall of Famer. Yes.
Love to see it.
Absolutely different story. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us here on Squad Show tonight. We'll be back next week for this. You can always check us out with our regular shows as well on the Locked On Cavs feed. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we will see you all tomorrow.